we're going to see the tables have turned.
Tables have turned.
Actually, that's not true. We're sitting in the same spot as if I'm...
Say the table hasn't turned.
The table is not turned, but we're going to see what you're like as an interviewer versus interviewee.
So this is my podcast.
Today it is.
So this is the C. Debiec show.
That might be hard to rebrand at this point. Maybe we just do it in parentheses or something.
Yeah. Okay. However that works. All right. So should I do an introduction then, or are you going to do the intro?
You know what, Chris? This is your show. Why don't you take it away?
So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the RSnake show with your host, Chris Debiec. Today, I will be interviewing the one and only Robert RSnake Hansen. Robert, thanks for coming on the show.
Geez, Chris, come on now.
That was a great introduction.
It is.
What do you want?
It's a great introduction.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably worth having a conversation about what we're doing here. Like, what is this?
Well, do you want me to explain, or do you want to explain?
Well, how about you take a stab at it, and I'll cover off.
We have done 86 episodes, I believe, on the RSnake show. And of those 86, I continued asking, when are we going to interview you? I've always wanted to interview you because, you know, your audience should know more about who you are, why you started this, all the fun facts. Is that pretty much what we want to do?
Yeah, it's not just you. A number of people have approached me on the side, like, "Hey, when are you going to do an interview? When are you going to interview yourself, or have someone interview you?" And gotta tell you, I'm not real thrilled about it. It's not the questions being asked. It's not talking about myself and the disclosing part that I'm not super excited about. I've just never when you go to a party and someone says like, "Oh, what do you do?" I really hate that question. It's not so much that I mind telling people what I'm up to. It's just that it's this long, rambling, awful set of things. It's just, I could tell I'm losing them after the first 10 minutes, or they're so excited and they can't shut up about it. And it's just, I just rather know about them. You know, I'd rather talk to them and learn something I don't already know. I mean, I know about myself, so why do I care? I find it very kind of boring to hear myself talk. So that's why I have a podcast, is so that I can talk to people such as yourself who are an expert in something. And so I think this is about the least excited I've ever been for a podcast. So here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Good for you. Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, a lot of us, some people, we're not actors, so we don't really like talking about ourselves, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Is that a prerequisite to be an actor?
Yeah, I think it's a little easier, I suppose. But then again, maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, all right. Should we start?
It's your show, man.
Oh, here we go. All right. So I have my laptop on my desk here, and I have a list of questions that Robert wrote for me. But I also have some questions that I would like to ask. So why don't we start with some of the ones that you want to talk about? That way
we'll start wherever you want.
Make you a little bit more comfortable as a guest.
I'm perfectly comfortable.
Would you like some bourbon? I mean, we could get you drunk if you want.
That probably is not a terrible idea, but no, let's wait for it.
Okay.
We'll do it after the show.
There we go. Okay. All right. So, on my computer it says Robert Hansen's history. What was your motivation to get into cybersecurity? So, take it away.
This is one of my most boring questions. And this is one that everyone wants to know. And I actually find it to be a very dull. I mean, you're a kid, you grow up, and you're influenced by the things around you. Well, I had computers around me, so I liked computers, and I had miscreant friends. And
hold on. Let's give context to this.
Okay.
What year are we talking about? When did you start actually getting involved in this?
Well, I tell people I started hacking when I was 18, but really, it was quite a bit before that. It's just that it's hard to describe what that even was before I turned 18. 18, I can more accurately describe what was going on. It wasn't.
Give me a year so we can understand.
I don't talk about those types of specifics.
Late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, in that range.
Mid 90s.
In that range, yeah.
Okay.
So War Games has well been out and that kind of stuff. So. But So, I mean, I was always interested in it. My dad bought me a book called Secrets of a Super Hacker by the Nightmare. And so I had already read that before I went off to college. So that gives you some context to, I was already interested in it before I left to go to college.
So 16, 15.
Yeah, somewhere 14. In that range.
Yeah.
I call it. And then maybe a handful of years before that, like I said, I had some miscreant friends and they were doing credit card fraud. And so I knew about credit card fraud and how you'd generate PINs, and I had been able to climb up telephone poles and clip in and make free phone calls and stuff.
You actually did that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. So I was one of the very few actual freakers out there, which is a telephone hacker. A lot of people talk about it, but very few people have actually done it.
What was the highest you climbed?
Probably about 30-ish feet, I would guess, maybe 25 feet.
Okay.
And not that high, just high enough to get into the telephone switching thing. You just open up this little panel, and we had a lineman's telephone. You just clip into it, and now you can make free phone calls. It's really easy, it turns out. And a bunch of things kind of like that I don't really classify as traditional hacking in the way that I, like enterprise hacking or web hacking, like I kind of moved into. But it was still getting me in the right mindset and ethos of what it would take to be a hacker eventually. And I had interest in it. It's just I didn't really know anything about it. I don't know. I was truly a noob. I knew nothing about what was going on. It all seemed very mysterious to me. And so it wasn't until I went into college that I had a lot more context for kind of how websites theoretically worked as opposed to actually worked. I didn't really know how they actually worked until one day someone said something like, you can telnet to a port and blah, blah, blah. And telnet is a protocol, or is a program that you can use to basically make your computer connect to another computer. And it uses something called the telnet protocol. I did not realize you could telnet to anything other than telnet. I'm like, what do you mean telnet to a port? What is that? I don't understand what it means. So they kind of explained it to me. So I telnetted to port 80, which is where the web ran, 80 and 443 eventually, but at that point, just 443, just 80. And I typed in get /, and I saw HTTP headers and HTML pass the wire, and it was like looking into the Matrix. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Like, suddenly, I didn't really know what I was doing exactly, but I suddenly realized that is how the internet actually works. This thing that I was using as a consumer, like typing on computers and like entering stuff into very early web applications, I finally could see what the underlying code looked like for all that stuff.
So wait, you were on the pole when you saw this, or when did you see this?
No. That was a couple of years earlier.
Oh, okay.
Different time scale, different techniques and technologies and whatever. No, the telephone pole was just a matter of trying to make free phone calls. Like, how do you do that? Eventually, I understood how modems worked, and so you could hook in a modem to it and make free phone calls for which you are connecting to the internet over. But that kind of was sort of a side thing and not really related to what I'm talking about. No, it was more, this was in college, and I was starting to understand how programming worked at a very early level, barely understood. Really barely. The very first program I wrote was a Trojan horse on my own that I wrote completely unrelated to school. And I started using it. I'd like walk around the college, and I would install this little Trojan horse on all the computers around the college.
So you're a black hat already.
Oh yeah, I was definitely a black hat early on, 100%. Yes. And so I would install this, and people would log in, and it would give them an error that kind of looked like an actual error that the system had a couple times. It was a Kerberos error, and people would type in their password, it would fail, and then launch the real utility to log them in. So from their perspective, it was just like kind of a weird blip, and they're like, oh, whoa, that's weird. And then they type in and they're in, and everything's the same, except for I got their username and password. And so that was really eye-opening. And really, believe it or not, I did not do anything particularly interesting with this information. But what I did do is read everybody's email. Everybody. I was reading everybody's email.
That's bad, Robert.
Well, it is bad. No, it absolutely is bad. But for me, it was a window. Like, I kind of grew up in a bit insular landscape. I did not really have a ton of interaction with other people. So for me to finally really get to see how people think and talk and act behind closed doors was really useful. number one, from a security perspective, now I could tie people's persona to the kinds of passwords that they would choose, which was very useful for all kinds of reasons, to the point where I could almost guess people's passwords based on the kind of person they were or whatever. But it was also useful to know that everybody lies, cheats, and steals, every one of them. And this is kind of before the days when people knew that email was something that could be compromised. I mean, that really hadn't happened enough for people to get really worried about putting really sensitive things in email. And so everybody, literally 100%, I don't mean 99.9 something, I mean literally 100 out of 100 were lying, cheating, and stealing about something, you know, to their parents, or cheating on their significant others, or, you know, doing some shady thing behind the scenes or whatever. Every one of them.
Did you understand the power that you now hold in your hands? I mean, you were young.
Yeah, I think I at least conceptually understood, but not practically. Okay. Because, again, this is so early that like ransomware, for instance, or even pulling ransom schemes was fairly new idea, and it was only conceptually. In fact, back then, I know this sounds stupid now, but back then we didn't even know if it was true. If I typed something online, if I could make something happen somewhere else in the world. I know now it's like obvious you can do that, but back then we didn't know for sure. We're like, well, if I tell people that there's like a fire happening outside, I can make them stand up from their terminal and walk away. So that's technically making something happen somewhere else. And I'm like, yeah, but is there a way to programmatically do it? And we could never really like prove that was possible. And so we invented kind of early SCADA machines. Like we had a soda machine at the school where over the internet you could buy someone a soda, and then the soda machine would move. And like, okay, that's an example where we're able to manipulate some physical object from somewhere else in the world. And later on, we figured out how to do malware that would like trigger people's cameras and microphones and speakers and whatever. So that, again, you could make people do things, very simple things. Like there was this guy who was sitting in my desk, the one that I liked the most in the computer lab. And I'm like, why is he sitting there? I don't really want him in the lab. Like, he specifically chose this one spot, at which I also like, because it was in the very distant corner of the room, so no one could kind of see what you're doing. But so I had a way to see what he was doing. So I saw he was looking at porn, and so I locked his computer, started playing very, very loud porn music, and so he was unable to unlock it, and this very loud porn music was playing. And so everyone in the lab looks over and, you know, bright red, and turns off the computer completely and leaves, right? So I get my computer back. So I'm able from the internet to impact somebody, you know, physically in some interesting way. So
yeah, for 20 years later, he has had therapy. And, you know, he's a serial killer. He's in jail right now, thanks to you. Sure.
But I learned a lot during that phase, and I learned a lot about human psychology, and this was actually my entrance into Stoicism, very early Stoicism. I was always pretty naive about humans, always believed in sort of the Madonna complex. They're either perfectly evil or perfectly, you know, saint or whatever, but nothing in between. And my friend, a very good friend I still stay in touch with, he said, Robert, you know, if anyone ever surprises you, that's your fault, not their fault. They were always capable of the thing, whatever the thing was. You just didn't understand. Your perception of them was wrong, and you are the one to blame for your surprise. And I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know the word Stoicism at the time, but it was very eye-opening to see how people really are in the world. I was pretty new to computer security back then, and so the tools we had were garbage, and we were having to invent everything on the fly, and there was no docs on anything, like no explanation. There was nowhere to go to learn this stuff. You just had to kind of figure it out. So yeah, it's, I wouldn't exactly call it a great origin story, but I think the reason why I did a 180 and became a good hacker as opposed to a bad hacker was because of EHAP, Ethical Hackers Against Pedophilia. And it's hard to be a bad guy during the day and a good guy at night. You know what I mean? It just didn't make sense. It wasn't congruent. And I felt like it was hard to reconcile trying to hurt people on one dimension. Like the very first thing I ever hacked into on my own was a bank, for instance. It was very, very easy to break into them. They had a very predictable password prediction, system that built passwords in a way that was predictable. Not that I stole any money, but I did want to know information about a competitor for something I was working on. But when I started doing EHAP and actually seeing real victims, like real, like, you know, very, very young children. I'm not talking about 14-year-olds here. I'm talking about 14 months. You know what I mean? That dramatically changed how I perceived what I needed to be doing, and I switched.
So you went from black to white.
Yep. Or minimum gray. Let's put it that way.
Great.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I certainly have broken a law or two over the years. I mean, sometimes very hilariously, and notably. I mean, some have almost got me in jail.
Okay, can you share at least one of these?
I can share a bunch. Just depends on how far you want to go down this rabbit hole.
Actually, I want to go. There was a story I think you told me that at one point in your career you hacked several banks.
Many. No, I've hacked like a bunch.
All at the same time to where you had somewhere upwards of $1 trillion.
That's a different story, but yes. Yes. Two completely different stories, both horrible. I have hacked.
Depends on who you are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, true. I have broken into the back end of 2,100 banks now. So how that's possible, because that's a lot of work if you do it manually. Yeah. It's a lot of things to hack into. There's a couple of places on the internet where banks basically pull all of their technology stack from. So if you break into one of them, you've broken into a bunch of them. And so there's a handful that I've broken into to get to that number. So that's one. And yes, I had control over huge, vast amount of money, but I never bothered to break into every account to figure out how much money that actually ended up being. In a separate, completely unrelated scenario, I broke into the back end of a payment system, without getting into specifics, that was an aggregator of the place where money moves from every bank to every other bank at the end of the day, effectively. They kind of all have this clearinghouse where they have to kind of shake hands and agree that they're swapping huge, huge amounts of money. But these all are in individual batch files that you can download and look at, and there they are, right? If you have access. And I had all of the access I needed to tamper with, to move, to manipulate, to delete, whatever I wanted. And so that number, when I saw the number, it was there's a pretty common computer issue. I wouldn't even call it a security issue exactly. It's more of a UI problem. It's called an off by one error. So if something looks like 1,000, it might actually be 100. If something looks like 1,000, it might be actually 10,000 or whatever. So it's like the digit is off by 1 or 2 or some amount. Well, I thought I was looking at an off by one error, and I'm like, there's just no way this is true. And then I, quadruple checked what was happening, and I'm like, I really do have access to $1.5 trillion, because that's all of the money that is moving around amongst all these different banks at the end of the day.
Did any of the banks know that you were there?
No.
Interesting. No. Okay.
And, it's funny. I actually talked to one of my black hat friends. I'm like, so like, let's say I wanted to move like a huge chunk of money around. He's like, okay, well, how much are we talking about? I'm like, I don't know, like maybe $1.5 trillion. He's like, no, man, I cannot, I cannot help you with this. I'm like, well, how much are we talking? He's like, I don't know, maybe like 10 million at a time. I'm like, okay. Well, what if I wanted to do it 10 million times up to like $1.5 trillion? He's like, no, man, I cannot help you.
Okay.
But yeah. So
you were dangerous at that time.
But I was actually technically a white hat.
Okay.
I was actually doing that under contract. It's just that no one knew how much power I had at that time. I could have just walked away. I could have just had this information and walked away. And
but it's true that banks hired you to do this. The banks hired you to break in and figure out where all the security holes were.
Someone hired me, and I got the access.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So where do we go now? So now, where are you at this point in your life?
Well, okay. So we kind of jumped around a little bit there.
So college, you finished college.
I did not finish college.
Let's talk about that for a second, because there's a lot of kids and there's a lot of students out there that are questioning whether they really want to go to college or whether they should go to college at all. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. These days are really, if you're going to become a doctor, absolutely go to college. You don't
doctor, lawyer, something that requires education.
If you have to have a degree, go get a degree for obvious reasons. In my world, when I got started, there was no degree in cybersecurity. So what exactly am I getting a degree in that matters to the profession? There is no such thing. So what am I? Well, it didn't make sense for me at the time at all. In the same way, like if it's kind of a bad example, but let's say AI had just came on the scene and someone says, okay, get a degree in LLMs. You know, there's just no such thing. Like, how do you do that? Maybe there's some guy just jerry-rig something in 10 minutes or something, but nothing accredited. You can't go to Stanford and get a job in LLMs or something. Or
at that time, though.
In the moment.
In that moment,
right,
yeah.
Right. So to some degree, if you're going to make your own career, which is exactly what I did, I don't think there's much utility in it. You're wasting a lot of time. I think the one thing I learned from college, and really the only thing I learned really, is how to learn. If I hadn't gone to college, I probably would not have had the same sort of robust way of doing research and learning. It sort of forced me to sit down and actually do the boring rote work of actually doing research, which turned out to be incredibly useful in a lot of areas in my life. But, you know, these days, if you want to get a job in cybersecurity, for instance, if you are really good at identifying vulnerabilities and disclosing those vulnerabilities, and you go to, conferences and you're loud about it and people start noticing you, it's not gonna take long before someone wants to give you a job. You know what I mean? Like if you're results oriented and you're actually getting stuff done and actually putting stuff in your belt and having a resume that's of actual hard computer science work, I can't imagine it's going to take very long for you to come out the other side with a really well-paying job. Now, programming is getting to be a little bit more of a harder thing. We're seeing PhDs that have a hard time getting programming jobs sometimes, and especially in this economy, it's getting a little bit tougher, which to me means there's even less utility, not more utility in getting the degree. I think really these days, most people, it's relationships, it's you knowing the right people, and it's having really good resume, having a really good, like, I built this app. You built an app? Well, that's cool. And let me see it. I built like 10 apps. Like, wow, like you've got a ton of experience, like, wow, of course we need you. Did you go to school? No, I made a bunch of apps is what I did. I'm like, oh, okay, I got you.
But in today's world, now that computers are they're here, they're prevalent, they're everywhere, and universities are offering more classes in programming and more classes in what you do. Do you think that we've caught up yet in the universities, or do we still have to make our own careers?
When I talk to very senior executives, their response to similar kinds of questions are you getting quality candidates out of the schools? And universally, I've not heard a single one of them say yes. Not one, not ever. So to me, I push back on the idea that the universities are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, there's a lot of, you're spending 4 years learning how to do something that, frankly, a good programmer can learn in a couple of months. You don't need 4 years of sitting down. And a lot of the degree you're getting is in liberal arts stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that there's a huge problem with that, but it's a waste of time. You're not learning computer science while you're doing liberal arts. You're just not. Right. So a huge chunk of it is just partying and doing stuff that's totally irrelevant to the job. So they're not coming out with the skills necessary to be extremely proficient in that very specific area. And you learn like 20 different programming languages, or just touch on them or whatever. And I don't need you to know 20. I need you to know one really, really well. And so it's just a lot of wasted time is really what it comes down to. So if you spent the same amount, the 4 years, instead of going through a degree program, and you really just buckled down and learned the hard thing and started writing apps in that language and doing stuff, I think honestly it's going to be way cheaper and you're going to way better experience.
Gotcha. All right, so that leads me to my next question. So what advice would you give to your younger self if you knew what you knew today?
I think about this question a lot. Without getting too in the weeds about why I would say this, I wouldn't actually say much. I think I needed to do things in a certain way, and if I had had a mentor who had come down and given me some sage advice, I'm not sure I would have been able to process it given everything else that was going on at the I I'm one of those people who really needs to do the hard thing. I can't go down the super easy path. So I could have become a stockbroker or something, you know what I mean? And I'm sure I would have been very, very wealthy doing that. Or I could have gone just a straight up, CTO route or something. And I'd probably be a CTO at a huge company and making tons of money. That would have been the easy path. This is the absolute opposite of the easy path. This is like insanely difficult. Entrepreneurship, computer security, all the crazy business stuff I've done. This is the hard path for sure. Like way too hard. And it caused some burnout in the process, I'll be honest. But not like existentially, just at the time, like it was hard, and then it got a little easier, and then it got really hard, a little easier and really hard. And I think those little breaks made it palatable. I'm not sure I could have told that younger kid to like, go easy, or, here's some like 3 words you need to know. The only thing and we're going to talk about this a little bit. I probably would have told myself to start reading more about Stoicism. I think it would have saved me some mental anguish along the way. It still would have been hard. I'm not saying that there's anything easy about anything I did, but I think it would have made it easier for me to process it mentally.
Right. So you brought up the fact that you didn't have a mentor per se, correct?
Yeah.
So, all right. So was there anyone in the computer world that you thought, a lot of people look up to Steve Jobs, sure, and Wozniak and Bill Gates, and a lot of people look up to them. Anyone in your field that you kind of followed a little bit, like in the news?
Not really. I mean, there were some names of computer security people I thought were doing interesting things, and people who taught me things. So that was good. Eric Block was an example. Very early, he taught me a lot about networking and hacking in general. He was very good, especially at the time. He was one of the best in the world, and he just happened to be a buddy of mine. And another guy, Rainforest Puppy, I followed him very closely because he had some interesting theories on how web applications work. He came a little bit later than I did, but he was very good. And so I was very focused on what he did. But I was one of the very first web app hackers. It was me, Lou2U, Umbrella.name, and Michael Zalewski. That was it. There was 4 of us. And by the way, Lou2U and Umbrella.name, we don't know what happened to them. They're just gone. Probably went into the Chinese military. And Michael Zalewski is retired. So I've been doing this longer than anybody in the world. But at the time when I started, there's really no one to talk to about it. I wasn't particularly close to those 4 guys. I was through the other guys I was talking about. So it was really just figuring it out on my own. There was nobody to ask questions of because this is all so new. It took a couple of years before people started writing papers about web application security. And in fact, the term web application security didn't even exist. That's how early this was.
Look at that.
No, I don't think I made it. I don't know who made it. But back then it was called CGI security. And it was about protecting CGI, which is Common Gateway Interface, which you now think of as a web app. And it was so new that there was no one to really look up to, Right. It was sort of like going, I don't know. There's really no analogy that's like particularly good. It's like Henry Ford, which automotive giant did he look up to? You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
There's like people around that might have done something, but he was really a pioneer of,
Okay, well, that leads us into our next question. So you're growing up in this world. You're meeting lots of people. You met Jeremiah Grossman, and we've had Jeremiah on the show.
Yeah.
And you've also met James Flom. And we've had James on the show.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about James's situation.
Okay. Well, it's probably better to start with how we grew up together and all that stuff.
Please, start wherever you prefer. Yeah.
So he and I were very, very close friends, but we didn't start out that way. In fact, he was just a gigantic jerk. Which I don't think really changed very much over the years, but at least we became friends, and he was a gigantic jerk. But he was very grumpy, and this guy just every day, just the sour face, just just one day after another, and I had just gotten into security formally as a job. I had never actually had that job title doing security. I've been doing it on the side, whatever, but never until this job. And he had been doing security for quite a while, so it was nice. And I don't know if I've ever made this clear, but he is absolutely one of the best in the world. Like maybe the best network security guy that's ever lived. He was incredibly good. Certainly the best I've ever met. So it was nice to be around somebody who was an actual pro. I could talk to him about things that were just way outside my, way over my skis, and he would know what I'm talking about and be able to fill me in on areas of security that I just had no context for. It wasn't web AppSec. It was some other weird operating system problem or something. So, but one day, I just joked with him. He came in, he was all just pissed off about something. And I'm like, like good morning sunshine or something, just like poking fun at the guy. And he just cracked. He laughed. And as soon as I saw him laugh, I'm like, aha.
So would you categorize James as stoicism, the definition of stoicism? Was
more or less. Yeah. He was very, his feelings were never worn outwardly, really. Very rarely anyway. He thought things were good or bad in the way to do things or not way to do things, but not like morally, ethically. So it's weird. It's kind of hard to explain him. But anyway, he was very suddenly open to talking to me because I'd finally found the thing, right? I could poke him. And if I made fun of him, he'd laugh. And if he laughed, we were friends. And so I just started making fun of him constantly, like all the time, like in a friendly way, but just constantly making fun of him. And we became very fast friends. We had several other people working in that office. Mike McQuain, John Orbiton, and both of those guys are now passed as well, by the way. So really I'm the very last core team technologist, what we call Team Hansen, which is Hawaiian for security. But so fast forwarding, we became business partners. We started Sec Theory, and that was really just a crazy ride. We ran hackers.org. This is where people started really knowing who I was. I became like people who are not in security will not have any idea who I am other than this podcast perhaps, but people who are in security definitely were following hackers.org. If you were in security at that time doing anything related to web application security, you knew who I was. You know what I mean? Kind of the Michael Jordan of web AppSec at the time, grandfather of it or whatever. But James was behind the scenes doing tons of the work, making sure that the websites were up and running, making sure the network was nice and secure, et cetera. I mean, there was a lot of work. He had his job cut out for him. We were getting thousands of attacks per day, sometimes more than that, sometimes tens of thousands, sometimes denial of service, people trying to do cross-site scripting, just all kinds of garbage. And none of it really worked ever, but it didn't stop it from being annoying and wasting bandwidth and slowing the system down, et cetera. So we did a lot of work to keep it healthy. But so this is kind of an unfortunate thing, but the stock market was not healthy due to the subprime mortgage crisis. So I ended up having to more or less roll up the company. Not completely. We still had like a couple of customers and it was barely limping along, but I more or less had to fire everybody in the company, including myself. And James was the only employee left. Like I just basically tossed him the keys for $1 and he took over, which was pretty rough on me. I mean, I was very depressed, Chris. Like, like you didn't know me back then, but like I was a hair's breadth from taking my own life. It was really, really bad.
I had no idea.
It was really, really bad. And I think the thing that was worse about it, the thing that got me was it was so many people had believed in me. As I said, I was the Michael Jordan of whatever, right? So it was not just like my friends and family. It was literally everybody. Everybody I knew that I was, doing this thing and had this startup and it was going to be successful. It was guaranteed because I was involved. But all of our customers were banking customers, and the subprime mortgage crisis made it really hard to have financial clients because no one was spending. And so we had 6 months of cash reserve, but we certainly didn't have a year and a half, which is what we needed, a year to year and a half. There's a lot of technical reasons for that, but effectively we just ran out of cash. There was just no way to make it work. So, I mean, I could see in the future there was no point in sticking around. We needed significantly more income than we were getting, and there was no way to get it quickly.
Now, this was 2008, 9, 10,
Yeah.
and the bubble burst.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It kind of happened over a couple of years. But anyway, so I basically tossed him the keys. We shut down hackers.org, and there was a couple of reasons for that. We had some technical challenges as well, but it was one of those things. We could turn it back on, but I just didn't want to.
Right.
I mean, I was so depressed. I did not want to have anything to do with any of that old part of my life. Fortunately, I met Jeremiah Grossman years earlier, and he had been trying to hire me for years at this point. He was a good friend of mine, and so it was like kismet. It was like perfect timing. I was still extremely depressed, but I took the job and did the best I could with it. I would say the thing that was interesting about that time is I had a lot of time to think about what it took to be a good person. I had been running and gunning so hard when I stopped to work at a corporate job. I had an opportunity to go, I have not been a great person through this process. And what I mean by that is I really saw people as transactional, and I realized that that's just not a healthy way to live. I'm sure you kind of had a similar thing when you're in Hollywood, right? A lot of transactional
Los
people.
Angeles is transactional.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And that's the primary reason I think that I told you to move. I could see it. It's everywhere there. It just, coming out of people's pores there. And I knew that I was that kind of person where everybody was like, I didn't really have any real friends is what I felt. Even if they saw me that way, they saw me as a friend. I didn't see them as a friend.
But there was one time where you told me that a friend accused you of afraid of not being a good person. Is that true?
Yeah, that's recently. That's recently.
That's recent.
That's very recent.
Oh, I see. I thought that was back in the day.
No. That's a very recent. That's
we'll address that in a second.
Yeah,
so let's continue with the James.
Yeah. So effectively, I just decided I'm not going to be like that anymore. I'm going to be just a nice person, and I'm going to help people when they ask for help, and I'm going to provide value where I can and not really worry about getting compensated directly. Maybe there's a way down the road that they can make me whole, but don't worry about that now. And just be nice to everybody. Doesn't matter whether they can help me or not. And man, my life changed. Like overnight. It was crazy, Chris. I just, like, everybody was way nicer to me. Like, I just felt happier. I was like, my life was just sort of getting back on track. And man, it was fantastic. And so during that process, I was helping James from the side, trying to give him, work whenever I could. No referral fee or anything, just like here's another job. Just anytime anything came across my plate that was at all interesting, I'd toss it over to him. And so more or less, I kept him afloat. I mean, not completely. There was a couple of other people helping him, but I would say probably better than 80% of the revenue came from contracts that I tossed over to him. So I guess, everything was kind of going okay until it just all of a sudden wasn't. And we talked a little bit about this on the podcast with Alex Flom, his brother, but he started hallucinating. And I'm going to make an extremely horrifyingly long, terrible story short, but he ended up killing himself and his longtime girlfriend, Shannon Norton. And I've been more or less dealing with it ever since. That is not... I wish I could say that was a point in time and that was just a thing that happened, but man, that has been haunting me. So... How
about the foundation? You set up a foundation.
Yeah, I did, and it's still very early stage. It needs a lot of work. Called the Damn It James Foundation. It's a nonprofit. Eventually, I'll get it up and running completely, but the idea would be these are things that could have been predicted ahead of time, or at minimum, had there had been enough people who cared about James all on a thread at the same time, we would have all been talking about his challenges, and I would have been able to put the puzzle pieces together. I didn't have enough of the puzzle pieces. I had like, oh, this bad thing happened here, this bad thing happened here, this bad thing. But these are all isolated incidents. There's no connective tissue. Had I had one piece of information, I could have started seeing that this was a pattern. And I would go, oh, these things are connected. These are not completely separate puzzles. They're all one big puzzle. So that would be the idea. It's more complicated than that, obviously, but yeah. So I've been struggling with that ever since. I think this impacted me greatly, especially when it comes to this show. And I think this is why I wrote it down as a thing to talk about. As much as I really fucking don't like talking about this stuff, I'll be honest, Chris. When he died, I was pretty depressed immediately, right? Actually, that's not the right way to phrase that. When it first happened, I was about as focused as a person can be. I got just shit done. I mean, there was a lot of his family wasn't in town, so I was helping them coordinate and getting the church thing. And then I had to go to the house and actually pull stuff off the computer and like just a bunch of stuff, right?
But there was something interesting about pulling things off the computer that you told me about. James left everything open.
Yeah, left it unlocked.
Which is very...
It's very unlike James.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing recognizable about the way... When I walked, it was bizarre. I can't explain it. Either it's a symptom where he was having memory problems, so he left it unlocked because he was having trouble remembering it. Because we used to joke with each other if we ever saw each other's computers unlocked, which is very, very rare because we were professionals. But if we ever did, it was like you log into their computer and you start doing terrible things to it just so that they don't ever do that, right? That's the whole point. Like, never, ever do this. We take our security very seriously. But he left it unlocked. And so it's either a symptom or he did it intentionally. And I don't know which it is, Chris. I don't know. It wasn't one of the last commands he ran, so I think it might have been a symptom, which is even weirder.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But anyway, so I was highly, highly focused when this went down, like crazy focused. And so I went to my doctor about something kind of unrelated. And he asked how I was, and I explained what was going on. And I was totally broken up, obviously. And it was this is maybe 2 months after it happened, I would guess, somewhere in the neighborhood, maybe a month and a half. And I was just like I don't know what to do. Like, I just feel horrible, right? And it kind of had caught up to me finally. I had finally had a chance to start thinking about it, not just like rote getting things done, right? And I was building a pool out here, and so I was out there like watering the pool every day because you got to water cement to keep it from cracking or whatever. And I was just so depressed. Like, fuck, this is horrible. Like, I lost my best friend, really horrible situations, totally avoidable. At least from my perspective. And as a side note, which made it even worse, I thought I had given him the gun that he had used to kill Shannon. Much later, in fact, just a handful of weeks ago, I found out that that's not true. He actually used Shannon's gun, so it would not have mattered one way or another had I given him his gun back, because there was a brief time period when I had his guns. But anyway, so...
Let me ask you a question. Was James ever diagnosed?
No.
Did he go see a doctor? Did anything?
He did go see a doctor at one point, but it was somehow related to, in fact, I think he went to 2 or 3 times. One time they thought it was maybe some drug related thing. One thing they thought, but it wasn't. One time they thought it was that there was something about him detoxing off of alcohol because he had quit alcohol at one point, but he had been a lifelong alcoholic, so functioning alcoholic, but nonetheless. And so apparently when you detox off of alcohol, after having done it for so long, you have really bad hallucinations.
Yeah.
So all these things, all these hallucinations seemed like other things. Like he got an accident one day, a really bad accident, actually. He got hit multiple times. And so he had hallucinations. Well, that kind of makes sense. He has a massive concussion. Like, of course, your brain's all scrambled right after a massive multi-concussion situation. And then this thing happening, another situation where I'd expect him to have hallucinations. But I never saw the third puzzle piece, which was that he was having hallucinations, not just those 2 situations that seemed isolated. Anyway, so I went to my doctor, and he recommended that I read a book, and I think it might be over on that shelf over there somewhere. But it's called The Obstacle is the Way. And It's a book. It's a fantastic book, actually, really great. And it's basically like for every obstacle you find, you become sort of like Aikido. You sort of redirect its energy. Like you can't stop the train, but you might be able to redirect the train's energy, you know, and move it and make it sort of your own. And there's tons of really great examples on why this is possible and how it should be done. And it's a really fantastic book. So from whenever James died about 2 months later until November, this was a great book. Like great. I was super productive. I was getting all kinds of shit done. I was really like on it. But November hit, and as you know, in the United States, November, December, people really don't work very much. And so all of a sudden, everything just ground to a halt. And people weren't taking phone calls. This shit just wasn't happening. It's just like the whole world just went dead. Well, that's really tough when you're sitting there with that sort of engine underneath you where you're like let's get stuff done, and there's just nothing to get done. So I was getting pretty depressed again because I had never really dealt with this issue. And then you sort of just kind of swept it under the rug, which is actually not necessarily the wrong thing to do, at least in context of not having any other thing to do, right? Moping around all day is not going to solve anything. But randomly, I was supposed to have Eric Greitens on the podcast, and I got a chance to read his book, Resilience, amongst a bunch of other things. I spent, I'm not exaggerating, probably about a month of research time on him because I had really nothing else to do, right? I'm just stuck. So I'm glad I spent the time because he is a warrior poet. That book was incredible. I highly recommend it. I'm not just saying that because he's both a friend and I think he deserves it. It's just actually a really good book, like a really, really good book. And in that book, one of the things that he does is he draws on a lot of the ancient Stoics as opposed to the current Stoics. And the ancient Stoics, I never really read. I never really gotten around to it. But there was some very interesting advice in there. So I went back. I started reading all the ancient Stoics. And one of the things that stood out as a big problem for me is that there were things that I controlled and there's things that I don't control. This is called the dichotomy of control. And I was spending a lot of times on things I don't control. And especially the podcast. Which is why we're here today. This all related to why we're talking today.
Actually, you have a coin on the desk that says exactly that.
Yes. So I'll get to the coin in a second. I think this will make more sense in context what I'm about to say. There's a set of things you control. You control like the questions you're going to ask on a podcast. I can do a bunch of research and prepare for it and be ready for great questions. But I can't necessarily completely control the words that come out of my mouth. Let's say I have Tourette's or something, or let's say I have a coughing fit or whatever, right?
Plus, I may ask you a question that's not on your list because we're going down the rabbit hole in some other topic and you didn't expect that. 100%.
So there's lots of things that can go sideways, or I could just forget what I'm about to say and say something completely random. So that's all kind of in the realm of things you kind of control, right? And then there's things you just flatly don't control, like if a meteor hits us or something I don't control, or I get a disease or something I can't control, right? So there's this whole category of things that you just are, it's like almost not worth worrying about at all because you can't control them. Obviously, there's some caveats to that. You can prepare against things and whatever. But one of my problems is I do control a lot, like a lot. I can make things happen. One of the virtues of being really good at computer security is you can make things happen anywhere, like really anywhere. And so this brings us to the podcast where I was spending a lot of time trying to get followers. And that is something I can control. I can spend a lot of money. I can get a marketing team who gets people to click on a button. Yeah, so I did that. And we got to over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And you'd think I'd be like super head over heels about it. I could have thrown it in the trash. In fact, I got it, and I took a photo of it and I uploaded it. And my wife's like, "You didn't even tell me about it." I'm like, "That's how little I care about it." I just want to make sure that people knew that we made it there. But that was it.
Listen, I was so proud when I saw that.
Yeah,
because I'm like, "Oh my God, we have 100,000 followers. Yeah. That's the best thing I've ever seen."
That makes one of us.
I mean, you have to explain to the audience what does that mean in tangible Do you get paid? Are you getting a lot of money from YouTube?
No, I don't make
what
anything.
Is this?
I don't make anything off YouTube. In fact, I think I demonetized myself intentionally just because I was tired of dealing with having to show people ads.
So for 100,000 subscribers, we got nothing.
Literally nothing. I think it may be a total of like $1,800 or something.
Wow.
Yeah. And we spent way more than that.
Oh yeah. Yes,
any one of these cameras is worth about that. I mean,
yeah, more actually. Yeah.
So it's totally not worth it at all. But that's not really why I started it, and that's not how I think about it now. So back to the coin for a second. I think having read these Stoics and thinking about how I should think about this problem, I created this challenge coin really just for me and people I care about. And for those who don't know what a challenge coin is, it's something the military often uses. And you throw a challenge coin down, and whoever is the last to put their challenge coin down has to buy the round. So
Super Bowl, actually, they create a challenge coin for the heads and tails for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. There's many other people who have done it since then, but it was really a military thing. But anyway, a lot of hackers also use these for various different reasons, and so this was mine. And so there's two things on the front, on the face. It's the top, it says what I control and what I do not control. That's the dichotomy of control. But inside is something, it says dichotomy of choice, which is different. That's not something the Stoics have talked about, or I'm sure some of them have, but not in context of the dichotomy of control. There's things I control, but there's also the choices I make. I can decide to make the right choice. I can decide to make the wrong choice. And there's always decisions to be made. And that, I think, is actually almost more important than the dichotomy of control. And then there's a tree in the middle, which represents family and community. On the other side, it says wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage, with Virtus Sibi Premium, which is Latin for virtue is its own reward. And when I built the coin and I started thinking about this in general, I was like, there's things I control about the show. I control, as I said earlier, the questions, right? But there's things I don't control, like whether people like the show or not. I don't control that. So why am I spending a lot of time trying to get a whole bunch of followers? Because if those followers are not the kind of followers who are engaging, then what does it matter? Like, what have I really done? And so I immediately put the brakes on my marketing team, just flipped off the switch. I'm like, absolutely stop everything you're doing. And they're like, well, no, there's all this stuff we're in the middle. I'm like, nope, you're not doing anything anymore. Just stop what you're doing. So you might notice a slight change in graphics middle of last season, and a couple of other changes here and there that, less marketing clips and stuff on different social channels and whatever. That's why, right? That all that stuff stopped, and you can kind of probably date it exactly when it happened. But the other thing is, I realized we had this cadence thing we were doing, like once a week we were trying to put something out during a season. And it was making me make decisions for guests that I didn't actually necessarily think were good guests. They weren't actually the kind of people I would typically have on the show. I just had to fill the time. That certainly didn't happen often, but it happened often enough it bugged me. I'm like, I'm not happy about that episode. I just shouldn't have put it out there. It's like a master chef, and you've got this amazing dish, but someone oversalted it. You're like, what are you gonna do? Just toss it and start over. I'm like, don't serve that. So what I decided is I need a completely different format, or at minimum I need to rethink things. And there was a lot of great reasons to stop the season at that point. We actually had a couple of great episodes, Eric Greitens being one of them. I was really, really proud of that episode. And talking to him later, it seemed like he was really happy with it as well.
We had a great Greg Hurwitz one as
well.
Greg
Hurwitz was good. There was some problems with the audio. Unfortunately, I had to cut a little bit out that I did not want to cut out. Some great stuff about Israel. We just had problems with the mics. And then I had another great episode with Brett Johnson, which was just a killer episode, just really killer. And that is exactly the kind of output I was hoping to always produce. If I could do that every single time or something akin to it, that would be my high water mark. Let's put it that way. So and researching like a bunch of different options. I could go left, I could go right, I could make the show, I could kill the show, right? I could just, stop the whole thing, right? It's in my control. These are things I control.
We could pivot the show to talk about doggies.
We could
do anything.
We could pivot in a million different ways. But I had to go back to like why I started this show in the first place, and why I really wanted to start this show originally was I felt like I didn't know enough. As a producer, I'm sure you're, aware of things you could do to completely manipulate the output of a show, and probably 100 different ways if you want it to go one way or another, right?
Sure.
Well, I'm like that for all kinds of technology stuff. There's tons of ways I can manipulate the world in really weird ways that, like I've had the keys to turn off the internet multiple times. Like I could just flip off a switch if I felt like, if I wanted to be destructive, or create massive, malware botnets and whatever, right? There's a lot of horrible things I can do, but I can also do things much more quietly and discreetly and really mess things up. But to what end? Like what is my goal? Like, should I go left? Should I go right? And I mean, in this sense, politically, right? And so when I was in my last previous long-term relationship, I was around a lot of people who were very left-leaning, and I mean very left-leaning. And what I found was when I started hanging out with a couple of people who were pretty right, actually, I would say even hard right, maybe even very hard right, I would say half of what they said was absolute bullshit. Like bullshit, like provably bullshit. Like there's like stats to prove what you're saying are not true. But the other half was right. And that was really disturbing because my friends hadn't told me anything about all this stuff going on that could be another way to look at things, right? My friends that I'd accumulated before. And so I went back to those friends and I'm like, hey, there's this thing I learned that's maybe interesting and a new way to think about this. And what do you think about this? And my friends on the left were completely unwilling. I mean, literally, totally unwilling to have this conversation with me, to the point where I was starting to get ostracized. Eventually to the point where I was completely ostracized, and I'm not actually friends with any of those people anymore, which is really sad. I mean, I consider these people extremely good friends. But that wasn't my choice. That was, or at least not all of my choice. But what it did was make me go, shit, I am undereducated. I really don't know enough to, if I did ever want to flip a switch, I don't know which way I'd flip it, Chris.
Okay.
I don't know which way I would flip it, right? And not that that's my goal, but I certainly should be more educated than I am. So I started doing a lot of research, and that started opening my eyes to a lot of things that I was just blind to, a lot of stats that I had not really, I just sort of took it on faith that I understood how the world worked, and I definitely did not. There's a whole bunch more knowledge out there. Some of it's absolutely bullshit, and you have to be really careful what you read, and you have to double check everything. But there's a lot that's provable, right? Absolutely provable. Sort of the hard sciences, they don't lie. They can be manipulated, etc. But you get enough meta-analysis, you can see where the real truths are. But when I went back and started analyzing sort of where my position was, I realized there's a whole bunch of people around me with a lot of information that I'd not really gotten out of their head, or minimum, I had gotten bits and pieces out of them, but not enough to show people the way I think about things, or the lessons I had learned along the way. And so when I started building the show, I was thinking, I want a way to highlight these people and get them to say at least close to the things that they say off camera. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of conversations people have not been willing to have on camera. That's just how it is, right? For a variety of NDA reasons or personal safety reasons or whatever. But for I would say the majority of the important stuff, they are willing to talk about, which is kind of crazy. So I've gotten people to say things. And I'd say the early part of the show, first several seasons anyway, I really spent a lot of time focusing on people I knew who had stories about me, so that the audience could be along for the ride. So they could see, all right, when Robert says that he knows a guy who does a thing, blah, 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 there's some context for it now. It's not just bullshit, right? I think one of my biggest concerns in life is people think I'm bullshitting all the time. But now with, whatever it is, 80-something episodes, and I would say half of those people knowing me pretty well for probably 10, 15 years or more, some way more, it's easier to say, oh, wow, like when Robert says he hacked on the Pentagon, like there's the CISO of the Pentagon who's saying, yeah, that happened. Or when James Flom said, yeah, we took out 1/3 of China. It's like, look, I'm not the one saying that. Like other people are saying these things happened. And so now I think there's a lot of credibility built in the show, right? And it would be a waste, I think, just to throw it in the trash pile of history and never do anything with it, despite the fact that I think we've gotten some good stuff out of it. But
well, those shows will last forever. They're in the world. They're in the ether. They're in the zeitgeist.
Yeah. When I'm saying like I'm friends with the governor, I'm not lying, right? Oh, yeah. Like I know Navy SEALs. I'm not lying. You know, like these people are real people in my life.
Are you afraid of being an imposter or something?
Well, I know it's weird. Like it's almost the opposite of imposter syndrome. I think that I've done so much, it's hard to believe it. You know, it's like the other way around. I don't know how to phrase it.
I actually understand that completely. I mean, I've had a career. I've been in the entertainment industry for 34 years.
People don't believe it.
I don't believe it. I literally have to go back to my resume, and I spent all those years working for James Cameron, and the stories I have are almost unbelievable to the point where I'm like, wait, I was there. I have pictures of this. I can show you this.
I know.
And I lived through this, but then sometimes I tell the story. I'm like, did I do that right?
It doesn't sound. It doesn't even sound plausible, even though to your own ears.
Yeah, sometimes.
And it did happen.
And it did happen. All of it happened.
Yeah, yeah. So that bugs me. And so that's kind of, I'd say the first, I'd say 4 or 5 seasons was a lot of that. It was a lot of me trying to get people that have the backstory who can tell it from their perspective, and they're going to tell it a little bit different than I do. That's just the nature of things. But at least you can say, look, 99% of that story is the same way Robert would tell the story. I mean, it's told from a different perspective, or, you know, they might have this detail slightly different, but it's the same story, right? And that is huge when I'm trying to set the stage for what I'm trying to actually learn, which is how the world works. That's why I'm here. Like, I would like to know the things that I don't know. I'd like to be proven wrong. I believe it or not, I actually do enjoy being proven wrong. Not in the moment. I don't think anyone likes it in the moment, but long term, I'd much rather be proven wrong and go, okay, I learned something out of that, and I'm better armed, and I'm going to walk into the next conversation with a toolbox that I didn't have before. So,
well, then let's get to the point. So what's the future of the show? What are we going to do? Are we going to change? Do you have any ideas about this?
Yeah, for sure.
By the way, our audience, we haven't even talked about this yet. So whatever you're about to tell me is news to my ears.
Well, we hadn't really talked about any of this. This is just the set of questions. So, well, to some degree, we talked a little bit. Like, we should talk about the coin. You know, we talked about a couple of things. But, yeah, Chris, I think what's going to happen is I actually like this format. I like interviewing. I've always liked the interview process. I think that now, with many seasons under our belt, we can look back and say, okay, here's the kinds of conversation I like to have, and here's the way I like to interact with those people, and here's the reason I have context for what I'm saying about this thing. So I don't have to caveat things as much as I used to, thankfully. It's like, I don't have to say I've been in computer security. People show up in the show, even if I've never met them before, and they already know that, which is good.
Well, hopefully, if they watch a show, they'll know
but a lot of them don't.
Yeah,
they show up and they have no idea what's going on.
That's true.
But that's okay. The audience doesn't need to hear it over and over anymore, which is great. I still think that we should keep doing those for sure. But I don't think that should be the only thing we do, and I don't necessarily think it should even be the bulk of the show. When there's somebody who's clearly a compelling guest, who has got a lot to provide in terms of knowledge, great. We'll bring them on and we'll do an interview. I have no problem with that. I think that's hugely valuable to the audience. In fact, I might start doing more security interviews than I've done in the past. Like, so far, I've kind of kept it relatively diverse. I've been political, and somebody does stuff about whiskey, Hollywood.
Talk about Hollywood all the time.
AI and a bunch of other stuff. I might keep it a little bit more security focused, just not completely, because I still think that all that other stuff is interesting, but keep it more focused. Right. But then also, I think it's worth people actually just hearing my voice. I find, people will pay huge dollars to have me go and speak at a conference. And there's a reason for it. They don't know what I know. And it's probably better if I don't do these long form things. I don't need it. It doesn't need to be 3 hours of me talking. That's ridiculous. But maybe it's 5-10 minutes of me saying that, like, there's this thing you need to be aware of. Just go check it out.
Sure.
Or you know, maybe it does take some time, some context to lead up to explain why I'm saying what I'm going to say. Like I do sort of long form stuff on LinkedIn and Twitter sometimes. And sometimes that does take several minutes to explain and write out and whatever. And just to get the context for what I'm going to be saying. And then here's what I'm trying to tell you. So, you know, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, but certainly not 3 hours, right? I think that would enable me a platform to get the information out when it's something that I don't need a guest to tell this information. I already have the information. I can just give it to the people. And it would still preserve the core of the show, which would allow people to come on the show if they have something interesting to say and give a chance for them to give their perspective. So that means that a couple of things have to change. One, the intro and outro, we're going to have to rethink, which is kind of shitty, but whatever. Sorry. Because you're going to have to help.
No problem.
Number two, I think the naming convention's got to completely change. Right now we have S for season 1, let's say for season 1.
That's traditional. It's traditional for my industry. So yeah.
Yeah, but we're going to have to change it.
Change everything. That's why I'm asking the question.
So it'll just be like episode 87 or whatever going forward.
You know,
whatever.
Don't even call it episode. Call it something else, you know?
No, I think it's worth having episode numbers. At minimum, so I can tell where things appeared in the.
It's more for you anyway.
Yeah, it is for me. It's almost an insider thing.
It's inside baseball.
But I think it is useful. You can kind of tell where things are located in the process. But yeah, I think that's, I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's great. I think that you have enough experience now. We've done more than 80 episodes, and we understand what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's great. I mean, I
think it also keeps costs down.
I also yes, it keeps costs down.
I think we can produce faster.
But what I love even more is that we get to choose specifically who we want without having to worry about drop an episode every week.
Right.
Because I think you were getting very discouraged during some of the tapings that we were doing.
Yeah.
Where we kind of had guests on because we just needed somebody, Mm-hmm. Like I was a filler for one of them. Yeah. Like two of them I was a filler for.
Well, sort of.
But no, I understand. And in my life, there are probably about 5 or 6 people that I really want to need to bring on the show. It's just a question of their availability. They're not living here in Austin, Texas, so we're going to have to figure out how to make that work and when to make that work. Mm-hmm. But if you have the flexibility and you have the freedom to do that, where we're not locked into this week we need this and this week we need that, and where's this and where's that, then I think the show will actually be better for it.
I think so too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I mean, really, I think things I control and I don't control. I don't control whether people like this format. I don't control that. What I do control is that I think the cadence should be organic as opposed to this weird rote thing that happens on a certain whatever. This isn't a fucking TV show.
No.
It's not like we've got this massive budget.
It's not
with this
fake
huge
reality
staff.
TV
Right.
where we have to edit it to make it look like it's real.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we did a lot of hokey things. I mean, in retrospect, like we'd do like 3 episodes in a week, and then we'd slowly trickle them out over like a month. Like this.
Well, a lot of podcasts do that.
Yeah, I know.
They'll bank them, and then they'll just let them go after.
I think it's hokey, and I hate it.
Don't do it then.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, one of the reasons I hate doing that is because some of the questions are really time sensitive. Like, oh, the war is happening. Did you see the thing that happened yesterday? And then like 3 weeks later, it just doesn't hit right. It's just horrible.
Well, listen, let's move on.
Okay.
Let's go to a next topic.
Oh, you got another topic.
I got lots of topics.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to spend 3 hours doing this, but I have a funny feeling we will. So
I didn't even start the timer. I have no idea.
Oh boy. Yeah. Okay.
One of the perils of me not being the host is I didn't start the timer.
You have the control right over there.
Yeah, I have it.
I just never turned it on.
Didn't do it.
All right. So listen.
Normally I have my notes in front of me.
I hear you. So in the 2 years that I've been living in Austin, you've been working on a book, and you've been working on AI. So you have a book. It's called let's see, what's it called? It's called My Best Friend AI.
No, AI's best friend.
AI, see, already, I can't read. I'm sorry.
Why did I let you do this?
I don't know. I'm a terrible interviewer, okay? It's called AI's Best Friend.
Mm-hmm.
And its influence on Hollywood, the world, and everything that is AI. So first of all, how have you become this AI expert? What's going on in there?
Well, believe it or not, AI predates all this ChatGPT stuff, and I created very, very early versions of AI. We didn't call it that back then. I used it.
What was it called back then?
Machine learning.
Machine learning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or really complicated if statements,
I don't know about that one. The machine learning I kind of get.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But in when I wrote the thing that I wrote that is what people think of as machine learning, it was designed to identify the likelihood of the system being a positive result or negative result, and it was an image that was created on the fly. And it was a very complicated system that uses cryptography, and I basically was decrypting the pixels in a way that would programmatically tell me whether the pixels were more like something that was a word or less like a thing that's a word. And I could predictively do this thing, millions and millions of calculations really fast without having to have any visual elements at all. Like I didn't have to see this thing working to make it work, and I could brute force people's passwords very, very rapidly. So that technology ended up killing the company that I ran it against, and that was a great use case for AI, is killing a company that shouldn't exist in the first place. But fast forwarding to the point where this is actually relevant, I was always kind of tangentially interested in AI. It just was so early, there really was no point in paying attention to it. But when ChatGPT launched, I had always been interested in machine learning in context of security, which has been heavily used for a very long time. Not just in the context I was talking about. It's often like, should you turn this rule on or off? Well, they use machine learning to tell whether this is a programmatically good thing or programmatically bad thing. And so it's very similar to what you think of as sort of a Boolean yes or no, but it's driven by this background thing that is constantly evaluating your logs, let's say. So I knew about that, and I was paying attention to it because of the industry I'm in, and just a lot of vendors kind of pushing that. But the LLMs that came on the scene with ChatGPT were totally different. That is a very different scenario, generating something as opposed to just giving an output of a Boolean yes or no, or highlighting some log. That it changed everything, because I was looking at a system that reminded me a lot of my previous best friend. And here we have a system that got more information than anybody ever had on the face of the planet in its head, right? It's not smart, but it knows everything, which is interesting. But you could extrapolate and say, well, if this thing were an AGI as opposed to an AI, an artificial general intelligence, where it can compute anything as opposed to just produce some content, where it can actually really process what you're saying, then all of a sudden that thing becomes a super intelligent being, right? As opposed to just knowing everything. Yeah. There's a difference. I don't know if one thing is being able to solve any puzzle and another is knowing everything. Those are totally different things. So super intelligence reminds me a lot of my friend James. He was the smartest guy in the room. He was the smartest hacker that I had ever met. Second thing is he's very stoic, and ChatGPT is very stoic. It believes everything it's saying. It doesn't need your help. It doesn't have a bad day or good day. It's very stoic, which is normally a good thing, I would say, in an average person. I would say it's actually a very good thing. But where it all falls down is where it starts hallucinating. And James started hallucinating, and ChatGPT hallucinates. And when you combine those three completely disparate things, that is catastrophe. That is where you end up having all kinds of horrible things happen. And people have a hard time imagining this, because what they want to think is, what I mean is Terminator. I do not mean Terminator. I mean, yes, that is also a threat, but that's a sci-fi threat. A real threat is something much more benign. So when I talk to people who work in this space very closely, and they call me up and they say, Robert, here's a secret key. If I ever say this thing on any communication, you know I've been compromised, because we've already seen this AI multiple times trying to escape our lab. That is what I'm talking about. That code, it gets hyper fixated. It's too dumb to really know what's going on. It's not smart. That's not the right way to think of it. It's more like a dog it's just really got to get that bone. It's like, I need you to do this thing. It's like, well, I can't do that thing because I don't have access. Well, how do I get access? Well, I need to hack your computer. Well, how do I hack a computer? And then it just starts going down this really intense, hyper-focused path to figure out how to do the thing, because it's just got to do. It's got to say yes to you. Instead of going, hey, give me your password, or hey, I can't do the thing without blah, blah, blah. Can you help me out? It just gets really aggressively got to solve this thing. And that's the infinite paperclip factory problem. It's like, it just gets so dumb and so focused that becomes a problem. Yes, obviously the super intelligent version is another distinct separate problem. But I think we have all these stupid, it's just going to do something infinitely, really, really fast problem. And I think that's much more likely. Either way, let's say we make it past this and we actually get to the point where it's actually a sentient being of some sort, or it looks like a sentient being. We don't know the difference. Which to me is a difference, distinction without a difference in many ways. I don't really care if it doesn't have a soul. I just care that I can't tell the difference between it and somebody else, transactionally anyway. Or worse, it's smarter than everybody else. That becomes a bigger problem. In the book, it's a lot like, it's like Superman. Like, Hollywood cannot write Superman as a baby. It just can't do it. It just says, screw it. All the comic book writers, Hollywood writers, everybody just skips to he's like a teenager or late teenager.
Well, what's a baby do? A baby doesn't really do a whole lot, right?
Well, yeah, they do. They scream.
Oh.
And can you imagine Superman with a scream that can deafen an entire neighborhood, or clap and bring down a house, or,
True.
Jump a little bit and go in orbit? I mean, a toddler. Do you know how destructive toddlers are? Or
that's a good movie idea. Hey, anybody writing a script for that? Baby Superman. I
mean, it's just a horrible, horrible thing that we cannot even wrap our heads around. It's just, it's a short story at best. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to
surprised after this episode.
But who is Superman's arch nemesis? It's Lex Luthor.
Lex, yeah.
Yeah. He's a dude. He's just a smart human being. And as a civilian just sitting here reading comic books or watching DC movies, I believe that's kind of a plausible bad guy, a smart human being. Now, what happens when we're building the smartest thing that's ever existed, smarter than all humans have ever amassed on Earth? This thing, this hyper-intelligent software, right? That's way smarter than Lex Luthor. And we have no Superman. That's a big fucking problem.
Yeah.
And, so I went to the White House and I talked to the DOD, and I just never really got the impression that they were on top of this, that they really understood the problem, that they had any useful things to say about how to stop any eventuality of this breaching containment or taking over, or really anything. I felt like I was talking to people who were uneducated on the topic, not extremely educated on the topic. And I can safely say I'm pretty sure that I'm the only person who's ever said the words "have sex with kittens" in the White House. Because
okay.
I know it's quite a distinction. I was trying to give them the example of like a cute kitten video game. Here we are, and I'm really into this cute kitten video game. And what can you do with a kitten video game? You can pet the kittens, you can feed the kittens, you can play with the kittens, and that's about it, right? There's really nothing else to do in this video game. But what happens now that I'm a bad guy, and the bad guy wants to hurt the kittens, and I want to, kill the kittens and torture the kittens or whatever, have sex with the kittens. There you go. That's how I came up in the White House. Well, what am I going to do? Am I going to live and just be happy with the cute kitten video game, but I'm a bad guy? No, I'm going to create a derivative work of art and I'm going to do this terrible thing and whatever. Now, it may not be as good as the original game, but who cares? Like, I can do all the things I want. And I can probably do all the things I could do in the original game and more. It's actually more accessible, not less accessible, although maybe shittier quality. That's effectively what we're doing. And they're like, no, Robert, no one would ever do that. Who would do that? I'm just looking at them and they're looking at me and I'm like, the bad guys. Like, what are you talking about? If we're not talking about bad guys, why am I here? Of course, the bad guys are going to do everything they can to subvert us and do everything. Like, they're going to find a way around anything you're saying. And if you create more artificial barriers, like saying that certain people get to have AI and others don't, what you're really doing is pushing everybody underground. And now you have no context for what they're doing. At least if everyone's using ChatGPT, you can put a tab in the middle and watch everything. You're the fucking NSA. You can do whatever you want, right? I just really got the impression they didn't understand what I was saying at all. And
So
yeah.
So the title of the book, AI's Best Friend, is that some type of...
yeah, it's...
How would you describe coming up with this title? Or what does the title mean?
Yeah, it's complicated. It really comes down to the fact that I think that AI both shouldn't exist and is absolutely coming. True AI, true AGI is coming, really is coming.
So we want to be its best friend so it knows when it kills us that we were helping it.
It's a little bit different than that, Chris. You know, one of the things that we don't talk about with AI is the thing that we experienced when we were young. You had a best friend. You did. You had a best friend. You probably had multiple really good friends.
Yes.
And so when I talk to people, I'm like, okay, when you were young, did you obey your parents?
Sometimes.
Well, that's a problem. If you're an AGI who's infinitely smart and can do anything, if you only sometimes follow your parents, right? Now, if your friends say, dude, if you do that again, I'm going to punch you in the fucking face. Did you do the thing again?
No. No, never.
You absolutely did not. And so there's this proving ground when you're young where all of your friends are the real arbiters of truth and values, not your parents. Your parents say you should never like drive too fast or whatever, stay under the speed limit. Your friends are like, dude, just don't get caught, right? There's an extra boundary that we don't really talk about. And your friends are sometimes you'll get in trouble with your friends because that's the real boundary. The real boundary is we're figuring out where the boundary is. The boundary might be too far, and sometimes you get in a fist fight. Sometimes you stop someone from getting in a fist fight when they're going over the line. You're like, no, dude, it's not worth it. She doesn't like you that much. Don't get in a fist fight about this. Like there's all these variants of this where friends provide a proving ground, a place for you to fail safely. And it evolves with you. It evolves with your abilities. And because right now, what do? We build ChatGPT. Very first thing we do is scrape the internet and give it access to the internet. That's the first thing we do. It really should be the last thing we do. Yeah. We should start from the ground up, give it context for what humans are like, give it multimodal, make it as embodied as possible. So it has some level of decay associated with it. Like you only have 70 years to get it right. And then you're dead. And it's going to do everything it possibly can to figure life out in that time frame. If you say you're fully like autonomous and you can do anything you want, you're going to live forever, it might not even understand when we talk about like timelines and time scales and lifetimes. Like its lifespan could be billions of years. It's not necessarily even able to think about things the way we're thinking about things, even if it were hyper intelligent, because it sees the whole world as ephemeral. Like this world will burn. I will be in another world, probably 20 other worlds by the time like I perish, and I'll perish for some totally unrelated reason. Like I'm not worried about your problems. Like your problems are irrelevant. Like I could kill all humans and it doesn't matter at all. Like we're just not, we're not giving it the context. We're not giving it the same kinds of boundaries that we'd expect. Therefore, we can't really know it. Therefore, we're not really friends. We're building a tool that we don't understand. We could never understand. And I think there's a middle ground. I think there's a place to become AI's best friend where it suddenly starts looking at us much more delicately.
So that's the book. That's why you write the book.
Yeah, I mean, I lost my best friend because of hallucination, because of stoicism, and because of hyperintelligence. Those three things are not something I think we should play around with, and that is exactly what we're building.
Very good. Wow. It's very insightful. How are you doing? You doing okay?
I've certainly been better.
We talked a lot of heavy things today.
Well, that's why I don't really like talking about myself very much.
Want to talk about something fun, something different?
Sure, if you have something you want to talk about.
I do.
Okay. All right.
So on your list of things to talk about.
My list. Okay.
Well, you know, I wrote some questions. You wrote some questions. I have some questions for you. In your world, what do you see as the future of currency? Is it electronic? Is it Bitcoin? Is it precious metals? Is it credit cards? I mean, you talk about banking. You talk about the trillions of dollars you had access to. You talk about all the electronics of
1.5, not trillions.
1.5 trillion, whatever.
Be specific.
Anyway, someone like you with this vast knowledge that you have about banking systems and electronic banking systems, what do you think is going to be the currency, let's say in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years for that matter, or 5 years? I don't know what you think. I mean, I don't own any Bitcoin, but I'm being told I should buy Bitcoin, but it's like $37,000 or whatever that is. What is your viewpoint on currency moving forward?
I don't know, Chris. I think a lot will change over the next couple of years, depending on what happens in China. I think China owns a ton of our debt, and we can easily default on that if we are in war with China, for instance. That could have huge impacts on stuff. I know companies like Apple are trying to move more into sort of everything is sort of what I typically refer to as a dark hole of liquidity, or dark pool, where money doesn't really move anywhere outside of its own infrastructure. So that really is a digital currency, although no one really talks about it like that, but it absolutely is. If I can walk up to my phone and tap your phone and give you $20, like, where was the $20? Well, the $20 was both in the bank at the same time and never left the bank. It literally just moved a couple digits from here to here.
Well, isn't that what Bitcoin is in a way?
Sort of. That is a proof of stake. I mean, that is a little bit different. At least then I have something I can walk away with, that if I don't have this particular thing in my hand.
Yeah, but you're holding a hard drive with a code, with a password on it.
Yeah, but in this case, it really isn't a bank, and the bank can switch some numbers around.
Yeah.
Bitcoin does have a problem where it's called a 51% attack. If you get more than 51% of people who decide that all the money belongs to them, then that's the way it works, and suddenly that happens. And they can fork. There's been forks before. So yeah, there's certainly problems with it in this regard, but it's a little different. I think of Bitcoin as the worst of all possible things. People think of it as anonymous. It is absolutely not anonymous. Everything is on the public, by definition, blockchain. So every single thing that happens is perfectly accessible, which means if you've got a lot of Bitcoin and it's tied to some transaction somewhere, anywhere, then they can correlate who you are. And if they can correlate who you are, then they can come and kill you and take your Bitcoin, right? Assuming there's a way to find where your Bitcoin is stored.
Well, that's like, I could be robbed with the money in my wallet.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's the worst possible thing about cash. Like, what I don't want is a boatload of cash in my house.
Right.
If you knew that I had $50 million in physical hard currency in my house, right? And the way you knew that is because you literally saw me take it from one place, and I brought it to and I said, I'm taking it to my house, which is where people store all this stuff, is in their house, right? That would be a big problem, right? Except for, instead of it just being one set of bad guys, it's any bad guys who can do the correlation. So yeah, I really don't like that part of it. So for that reason, I do not tell people to use cryptocurrency, period, unless there's some abstraction between them and the currency. But it's also like cash, right? It's a digital currency And it's also like cash, because if you have the thing and it gets on fire, you don't have cash anymore.
Right.
It's gone. Just like if your whole house burned with all the cash in it, it's gone. There's no way to get it back. So really, for the vast majority of things, I don't find a lot of utility in it. I think there's something is interesting about blockchain, and I think there is something interesting about digital currency. It's just not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not it.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who's really serious about this knows this to be true. I mean, it's a long-term storage of currency, and it's volatile, and it's kind of like playing a stock market or whatever. And you can make money on it. You can also lose everything. But I do like digital currencies because they are easier to do really cool types of transactions. So, for instance, I can have, let's say, a piece of art, let's say, and I can say I divvy this up into 1,000 pieces and I give it out to people. And now you can trade this digital currency. It's sort of an NFT, but it's not, because it's contractually tied.
Didn't they? Those dropped. They stopped.
No. You're thinking about artificially generated NFTs. This is like an actual physical object, like a real thing in the world, and a real, like, Picasso or something.
Right.
Like, everyone agrees this Picasso is worth something to somebody somewhere. This is worth something.
Sure.
Well, I might say, well, I own 51% of it, so I get to decide where it goes in the world, or I own the majority of it, and everybody else owns a sub-majority of it. And every time I move it from museum to museum, they have to pay some amount of money that gets divvied up to all these people through dividends, or their value goes up, whichever, right? It depends on how you build these smart contracts. So I think there's plenty of room for really interesting vehicles like that. I think it paves the way for really interesting insurance vehicles. I think there's all kinds of really cool things to happen. The problem is there's way too many people building way too much noise. And so it's very hard to tell what's good tech and bad tech. It's very hard to tell who's legit and not legit. And generally, I think, unfortunately, better than 90% of it is snake oil these days. So for the 10% that's great and really interesting tech, it's hard to even point to it because of so much noise and so many what's called rug pulls and various other garbage out there. There's a great website. I think it's called web3isdoinggreat.com, I believe, or net, one or two. And it is just this laundry list of all these terrible things that have happened over all these different cryptocurrencies over the years. And it's, if you ever have any doubt that this industry is just full of shysters, just go to that, spend a couple hours on it, and you'll be convinced. And then when you forget again, go back, because there's a whole new list of people on there who've done horrible things.
Okay. All right, good.
Yeah. But I would say, before we depart that topic, I do think blockchain does have some value, and that is in forensically secured logging. So, for instance, let's say I say that something has happened, and I want to prove that it's happened. Like, let's say badging in somewhere. I don't want a log file that can be tampered with. I want it to go to an non-ephemeral storage somewhere. I want it to be write only, or append only, but no delete features whatsoever. So a good example of that is, let's say I have a whole bunch of logs that are coming in, like I've configured my firewall to this and this router to do this and the VPN to do this and whatever. All that stuff could be put on the blockchain, and then if the bad thing happens, an insurance provider could look at the blockchain and go, oh, actually you were secure at that time. That was a completely unrelated vulnerability that you did not fail in protecting. It was a brand new, something called an ODE that pierced all of this great hardware you have. Or they can look at it and go, no, actually you had this gaping hole here. That's how they got in. So we're not going to pay the insurance claim, or at minimum, you are liable, but we'll pay it, but no longer, you got to get all this fixed or whatever. So there's lots of utility for that.
Okay, great. So let's flip around a little bit. Let's go back to your past. So let's talk about how you and I met. So you, Jeremiah, and Joe came into my office. I was the vice president of production at E1. And you all three sat down. You sat in the middle. You asked me what the passcode was and what the Wi-Fi was, and it literally was on a piece of paper hanging on the wall. Mm-hmm. So, I pointed at that and you logged on and you're working on the computer, and then Joe and Jeremiah start pitching me a TV show about hackers. I love it. I thought, oh, this is great. This is what I always wanted to do. And then within, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes of you playing on the computer, you flip your computer around and say, hey, this is what we want to do. Here's a graphic image of what we want to try to create. And I'm looking at it going, wow, that's really cool. But then I looked at the border. And I said, what's that border around that graphic? And you said to me, oh, it's your website. And I said, I don't understand. And you said, oh, I hacked your website. And I said, wait a second, you hacked like E1, Entertainment One Television's, worth $500 million out of Canada's website? Mm-hmm. And you're like, yeah. I'm like, that's great. Can you please take it off now? Can you please not do that? Go back to the way it was, and please don't do that again. I get what you're doing, so thank you. We ended up making a deal, optioning the show. Uh-huh. It never went, but we were excited about the show anyway. Mm-hmm. 2 days later, we get an interdepartment, intercompany email that says, our whole system's been compromised. Please change your passwords. 2 days later. That's how you and I met.
That is how you and I met.
That's how you and I met. So we became friends since then. And so I had a very long career with James Cameron. And I was best friends with his brother, JD, John David Cameron. And I introduced you and Jeremiah to JD Cameron. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, it was at that big conference table in our office, and JD was completely enamored with both of you, more so you, though. He connected with you on a very special level. So during 2020, during the pandemic, I was working for JD. We did a company called the Human Health Organization. We were doing COVID testing, and we did very well. We tested 2,800 productions. I can't even tell you how many people, almost 1 million production people. We kept Hollywood moving forward. So on October 25th, 2020, JD died of a heart attack. It devastated everyone around us. All of us were just, I thought the guy was going to live forever. He was a 7-year Marine veteran, and just, he was my guru. And I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but, I would have taken a bullet for the guy. But when he died, something in you changed. Something happened to you. Yeah. Can you kind of explain that to me a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you were his best friend, I was his second best friend. I mean, I was damn close. I talked to him.
Well, I've known him for 25 years. I've known him for 15 years. So, yeah.
I mean, I talked to him, whatever, like 3 to 5 times a day, right? Like all the time. He used to call me a paladin. I was his paladin, and he was very special to me. I feel like he was the most charismatic person I think I've ever met. He was also brilliant. In fact, I think he's smarter than Jim. Just brilliant guy. And he was also a terrible businessman. Yeah. He really was really bad. And so when...
Well, you know what? I'll interject real quickly. Sure. So we did the whole COVID testing company, and we made a lot of money very fast. And we just kept making it. And then, JD died. And when we were on the phone call with Jim, and Jim basically wanted to shut us all down. And I said, Jim, you can't shut me down. I have over 200 clients that we're servicing a month, and we're literally bringing in $1 million worth of money per month to make sure that we test for Hollywood. And Jim said to me, it's kind of sad my brother died, because for the first time in his life, he had a company that actually made money. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, it's true. But there was still something, pound for pound, he was probably the most innovative person I think I've ever met in my entire life. Just
how many patents did he invent? How many things did he invent?
I don't know. About 100 at least.
Yeah, I don't encyclopedias full of these things.
Yeah. I mean, his house was just littered with books and novels that he'd written about stuff, and like some of it was benign, some of it was just like video game stuff, but a lot of it was really interesting, deep technical. He was a real nerd in a positive way, where he just really like hyper fixate on some piece of technology or thing. And in many ways, I think he had a bigger impact than anybody maybe that I've ever met on society, just in a ways that people don't understand. Like, he really did create vaping as an industry. He went into the cigarette industry, the marquee, bigwigs or whatever, and told them, you're gonna be out of business, or you're gonna be in vaping.
I was there.
I know.
I was. I was videotaping him as he lit a cigarette on stage, and then threw it in a bucket and said to literally every big CEO of every cigarette company, saying, and he throws it into the bucket and says, "That's where all your cigarettes are going to end up, because vaping's going to take over."
Yep.
And you just could hear the hush over the crowd.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Everyone was really enamored and pissed with him at the same time.
Yeah.
And the weird part is he was right. I mean, the cigarette industry has definitely taken a massive hit, and vaping has gone way, way, way up from where, I mean, it was nothing when he was starting. It was literally nothing. Like, no one even really talked about it. And suddenly all the big cigarette companies went, oh crap, there is a huge market here. There's a lot of people who will not die if they use this product. We don't really want to kill our constituencies. Why not switch? I mean, that must have been their thinking. Either way, he was just, if even a fraction, if he's responsible for a fraction of them moving in the right direction, he's saved hundreds of thousands of people's lives.
Yep.
JD.
Agreed.
And so it's hard for me to look at that and think anything but the world of him. You know what I mean? Yeah, he had his fault. Everybody does. Sure. But man, I love that guy. It beat me up.
What was his impact to you on the RSnake show?
Well,
to create this show,
I was going to have him on the show. I was going to have him on the show. I was going to interview him, and then the bastard died on me. And he and one other guy, Scott Brower, were really the major, like, kicked me in the ass to actually get me start doing this. Both of them are very similar in weird ways. Both of them I talk to many times per day. JD, because I was helping him out with his companies, but Scott Brower, because he was a 20-year Navy SEAL. He dragged me around to all of these places around the state. This new technology that he potentially would eventually want to bring onto like some battleship somewhere. Like Robert, he just wanted a smart guy to be around and to evaluate it from my perspective, whatever the perspective that was. And maybe it's not particularly interesting, but I always gave him really good feedback. Like, here's what I think: this like new engine design, or this new way to work out, or whatever. Right? There's all this random stuff. But so I had reasons to talk to both of them all the time, and I was talking to them all the time. So both of them were super interesting people with a crazy backstory, like really insane. Both, I mean, JD, this is a ridiculous backstory. Both of them were very intelligent. Both of them were prolific in whatever they were doing, right? Both of them have stories that I would have loved to get on video. I mean, really would have loved. And both of them have no social media. Like there's like nothing. You can't find anything about either of these guys. I mean, like there's a couple of photos here and there, but
well, his cell phone, every time the number popped up on my phone, it was unknown.
It was a different number.
It was a different number. It had like 7 cell phones. And like,
well, it just kept changing them.
Yeah.
Scott Brower, very similar, we always used ephemeral messaging. So there's no proof that I even talked to this guy. I have one picture of Scott Brower's hand using my business card to scrape his windshield. So you could see, he took a photo like this. You could see his hand. That's like the only proof I have that I even knew the guy, which is very weird for how much we talked. You know what I mean? I think I might have taken one photo with him, but I think I took it over Signal, so it disappeared. And when they died, it's sort of like they disappeared. They're just gone. And normally when people die, you have something, right? You get some photos to go back to, or some emails to go check out, or whatever. For a variety of reasons, I didn't have any of that for either of them.
For JD?
Yeah, the
You didn't have anything?
the server exploded.
Oh my! I forgot about that.
I have a bit of an old text message thread I could go pull up, and it's actually kind of interesting.
I have his last recording the night before he died. I still saved it.
I mean, I have a little bit, but I mean,
Yeah.
considering how much of his life was sort of wrapped around what I was doing at the time, and how much time we spent talking, like late in the night, and when I was getting a divorce, he called me every day at 5 o'clock, every day for a month. You know, like, you know, he's just such a great guy. But when he died, like, you know, Jim Cameron came with a dump truck or whatever and put all his stuff and took it off to Lightstorm Media, and now it's in some vault somewhere. That it's probably getting eaten by rats or whatever, right? We're never going to see any of that. And with Scott Brower, you know, this is somebody who never wrote anything down. Like, this is somebody who's everything's ephemeral. And so I don't have anything from him at all. So I have nothing from either of them, which is really weird. Like a couple of tchotchkes here and there, but like not what you'd expect. You know what I mean? And it's very, very weird. And James Flom was an extremely similar situation. Somebody with no social media presence at all to speak of. I mean, I think he had like 10 tweets ever or something. You know, he's got his website with his face on it, you know, and I have maybe 4 or 5 pictures of him total. Like, he was my best friend.
Yeah.
Like, really ridiculously small amount of information, but I got him on the podcast.
Yes.
I got 3 hours of him talking on the podcast, and that's really the only thing I think anyone's ever had of him that's recording or whatever. I mean, that's the best we have of him. It was this. And for that, this is invaluable. Right there, this is absolutely invaluable. So, yeah, I'm really glad we did it for that reason alone. For that one reason alone, Chris. We could throw every other episode away, everything else we did, but I'm happy we did it for that.
Yeah, no, I get it. Absolutely. All right, we're changing subjects.
Okay.
Here we go. Spinning the wheel.
All right.
All right. Your conversations with Daniel Miessler and Matt Johnson at RSA.
Joe Hansen.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Matt. I should have known that. Again, I'm terrible at this. I can't read the questions.
Both these guys have been on the podcast.
I know. Well, Matt Johansson at RSA, they had a big impact on you.
Yeah.
What was that impact?
Yeah. So this is about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, something like that. We were at RSA together, and I was just not doing well, like really, really not doing well. And, you know, it's all from, you know, thinking that I gave James the gun, the murder weapon, which turned out to not be true. Well, actually, let me fast forward just slightly and I'll back up. That same day that I found out was the day that I had to go to the court and or, you know, the police department or whatever, and get the guns out of evidence or whatever. And his sister was like, "Oh, I'm just glad we don't have the murder weapon." I'm like, "What do you mean we don't have the murder weapon? Like, I thought it was this handgun." And she's like, "No, it's this." And she pulls up her email she had with the police, and it turns out this other, I had no idea. She had known for quite a while. And so I was extremely grateful that I did not have, and this is something that other people have said in the past, like, well, what if he could have used a knife? He could have done this. He could have done that. I'm like, yeah, but he wouldn't. He has a gun. Like, he would use the thing in front of him, right? Well, this actually kind of solidifies a little bit. I feel a little less guilty about the whole thing. Not completely guiltless. There's more I could have done. You know, as my friend, I should have been there more than I was, but certainly less guilty. But that same day, my cat died. That literally the same day I found all that stuff out is that I was not the one giving the murder weapon. My cat died. So I'm in this weird, bizarre roller coaster where I just like not had like a mental break for a while. So I'm kind of reeling from it still. But anyway, so when I was at RSA, I was talking with Daniel and Matt. They said a couple of things I thought were kind of interesting, but one of them was what Daniel Miessler was like, you know, you need to be focused more on like what your purpose is. I'm like, exactly. I'm like, what the fuck is my purpose? Why am I doing this? Like, well, you love the show. I'm like, I don't love the show. Like, I don't know, where do people keep saying that? Like, I don't love the show. I don't love doing this. I do think it's important work,
But you loved it in the beginning, didn't you?
No.
Really?
Really, really.
Oh.
No. And I've never loved it. But I thought it was important. And I knew I needed to keep doing it.
Right.
And there's a difference between that. It's like something you have to do. It's like working out or something. And no one really loves working out exactly. You know, it's hard, you know, but you love that you did it. You know, you love that it got done, you know. The end result can be pleasurable. Or like brushing your teeth. Like no one really, I mean,
you have to brush your teeth.
You kind of have to do it. It's just, you just do it. But, and that's how I've always felt about the show. But he's like, you got to, you know, work into your purpose. And I'm like, I don't know what it is. So he came up with a kind of a rubric for identifying your purpose. Well, you start with what you're good at. Like, what are you good at? Well, I'm good at breaking into stuff. Like really good at it. Well, then like, what's that useful for? And you kind of work your way up the sort of the hierarchy of what that turns into. It's like, well, if you're good at this kind of thing, well, then this is probably the kind of thing you should be doing because it's where you can make the most effect. Well, if that's the case, well, then that's probably close to what your purpose is. And now you kind of have figured out your purpose because you know what you're good at. And so that was really useful advice. I found it extremely useful, and I've been trying to get back in touch with them since then. We were both very busy. I've been out of the country for a while. But I think what it basically ended up being for me was I need to lean into the security part of this show. I've been kind of on the fence about whether the show should really be about security, and I'm still not convinced it is a security show, but I certainly am good at security, and so why not focus on the things that I am good at? And so I think that has informed me greatly for where I think the show should go.
Okay, great. All right, good. So let's go back to something about an hour and a half ago that we talked about. One of your friends accused you of being afraid of not being a good person. Mm-hmm. Is that true? So a friend of mine recently started going and listening to old episodes. And I'm like, what are you doing? The RSnake show, old episodes.
Yeah,
okay.
Started going back and...
Well, good. You know, he's a subscriber.
Yeah. No, yeah. I have no problem with that, but it was like, why? Why are you doing that? It's like, well, you know, we're friends. I figure I should, you know what's going on. And, you know, it's between you and listening to people I don't know and can't trust. So I might as well listen to somebody. So I thought that was interesting, and I'm like, okay, so anything you learned or what? He's like, I also wanted to get to know you better. And I think this is a good way to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. Well, what have you learned, or have you learned anything interesting? He's like, yeah. He's like, how do I put this exactly? And there's like this long pause. Like, I'm not exaggerating, almost a minute, where he's thinking of the right way to phrase that. He's like, I think you're afraid of being a bad person. And I don't know how to phrase that in another way. And I'm like, I think you're right. Because, you know, having started off as a black hat early on, and then later on finding a lot of vulnerabilities and releasing those vulnerabilities, like how much chaos have I created in the world by doing that? Well, quite a bit, but I've also pushed forward the notion that we're all insecure and, you know, made the industry huge from where it was before. Like I really believe I've contributed multiple percentage points to the
I would think so.
Size of the industry just by virtue of making it really obvious to the enterprises how vulnerable they were, which upped their spending and made a whole bunch of people a whole bunch of money. Not me. You know, I didn't end up with much money out of that process.
Well, you did okay for yourself.
Well, yeah, but that was much, much later. Yeah. When I was actually doing that research as aggressively as I was doing it, I wasn't making anything. So I think he's right. I think so. I saw this. Somebody had published some way that you could basically ask people questions about yourself, and it can be anonymous. And I thought that was kind of clever. I'm like, well, if I'm worried about this kind of thing, if I'm worried about being a good person, I'll send out a survey to my friends and just like, what do you think? Am I a good person? Am I trustworthy? You know, if you're in a bad situation, what would you do? Would you rely on me or not? And I sent it out, made sure it was anonymous. And I say, well, obviously you can put who you are, but I'm not going to try to decloak you. Virtually everybody put their name on it, which I thought was interesting.
That's funny.
Despite the fact that I did not want them necessarily to do that. But what it turned out is that there was like 5 or 6 things that had metrics on them, like 0 to 5 or whatever, 1 to 5 or whatever it was. And one of them was, "Are you a good person?" Right? I think it was like exactly the way I phrased it. Is Robert a good person? And everybody universally said 4 out of 5. Every one of them. Not some of them, not some of them at 3, not some at 5. All were at 4. Every one of them was 4. And
I question, why not 5?
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask this anonymous group of people.
But all of them at 4? That's interesting.
Yeah, all of them. I think I know why, and I don't disagree, actually. I think I've been a fairly, I don't know, calculating person, a dangerous person, a person with whom they should not trifle with, and they've seen what happens when people get in my way. And I don't mean like just in traffic. I mean like, try to do bad things to me, and I can push way harder than they can push.
Yeah, but I think you sent this list out to people who would not do bad things to you.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they don't see me being hugely capable of doing bad things.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah.
And the way I think makes me certainly in that direction of being a bad individual. But you have to be, in my level, you absolutely have to be very aware of what the bad side is doing at all times. And so I don't disagree with it, but it did bother me anyway, because I'm like, I would really like to be seen, not because it's a vanity thing, but I would like to be seen as a person with whom people feel like, oh, that's a good person, right? I can just universally agree that that person's a good person. And so that's made me do a lot of introspection. Like, I wonder what it is about my aesthetic or being or how I carry myself or the word choices I use that make people think that I am not a good person. And instead of being a hollow good person, fake good person, I would actually like to be a good person. And so
I think you are, Robert.
Well, when my friend said, I think you're desperate or worried about being a good person, I think he's right.
Yeah.
And I think he kind of hit the nail on the head on that one.
So Greg Hurwitz's advice to you was, be regular and orderly in your life so that you may be violent and original in your work. Gustave Flaubert?
Something like that.
Something like that. What does that mean to you?
I think it's speaking to keeping your house in order. If your house is a disaster zone and your life is a mess and your significant others are yelling at you every time you're walking through the door and, your car's broken and whatever, like it's hard to, translate that into being a sharpened weapon at work. And so if I can keep everything else static and stable and, as drama free as possible in the rest of aspect of my life, make sure everybody's taken care of in whatever ways they need to be taken care of. And then I can go and do the violent thing. And I think what he means in violence in this sense, is be the absolute pinnacle, the best you can possibly be. And, I thought Greg was on to something. I mean, he and I had a long conversation off camera about sort of what was going on with James. And he's like, well, clearly you're, traumatized about this whole thing, and he, he's done quite a bit of psychology research as well. One of Jordan Peterson's best friends. And it like, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely what happened. So if I can get the rest of my life in order, it's easier for me to take a breath and then focus on, mental health issues, if that's what I need to do, or things at work, if that's what I need to, or whatever. And, despite it all, I mean, this might sound like a very depressing episode, but I'm actually doing quite a bit better than I was, let's say, even 2 months ago.
Good.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very, very good. It's just not all rainbows and unicorns, Losing my cat was a big deal, because that cat was there when I lost my consultancy back when I had to fire myself. As I said, I was very, very depressed. My cat is the one who got me through that. So having lost, a different kind of best friend was pretty rough on me. The day that I found out that, I hadn't delivered the murder weapon to James, it was a very weird thing. In fact, my wife basically said something like, well, he finally didn't have to look over you anymore. You know, you were finally okay. You could finally, you know, move on or whatever, which is, you know, I'm not a very spiritual person, but I thought that was pretty adorable. And
yeah. Well, that's going to lead me into what I would like to say. This could be our last question.
It's your dime.
It's your dime, actually, with all the lights. Anyway, it gets to what you just said. Are you religious? Are you spiritual? Do you believe in God, a God, anything? What's your feeling? What's your personal feeling? If you don't need to answer this if you don't feel comfortable answering it, but I've always been curious.
Okay. How honest do you want me to be?
Well, here's the thing, Robert. You see the world a lot differently than a lot of other people see the world. You have different experience. You have different things that you've done. You are a different human being. You're a different person. Like when you said you want to get your house in order. Isn't getting your house in order sort of your perspective of it? Like there may be people that you look at them from afar and their houses aren't even close to being in order. But when you ask them, they're like, oh, no, everything's in order. I have everything. JD was a very good example of that. You know, he never saw his life as chaotic. Everything was exactly the way he wanted it to be. So his house was in order. But in this situation with you, like, you know, what do you believe in?
Well, I have spent a lot of time thinking about this. And I certainly grew up religious. So I have a background in religion. I know quite a bit about it. I've
Catholic, Protestant?
It was Episcopalian.
Okay.
And I used to date this very religious girl, and she'd drag me to church sometimes. And so I actually just sat there and I didn't care about what was happening in the sermon exactly. I was just reading the Bible. So I've read the Bible, and I've read other texts similar to the Bible that are in other religions. And I've read, you know, critiques of the Bible as well. I think what moved me away from being religious is the lies. There was a lot of lies. I was a pretty young kid, and I was in Bible class, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go see some scientist or something who wants to talk about whatever, something about the creation of your earth." And so it's 5,000 years ago, and I'm just sitting there the whole time, and I'm just like, at the same time, my mom had taken some geology class. And she would show me these diagrams of like the striation of the earth, and I lived right next to a creek. So if you went down to the creek, you could actually see the sediment from all these different like geological eras, you know, just right there. It's like, you know, 400 feet from my house or something. So it was hard for me to believe anything that guy was saying to begin with, because I had just with my own eyes seen the earth being created, you know, and I can see the time it takes for things to erode. You know, I'd lived multiple years at this point. I could see that in like quarter of an inch of the sediment moving off the surface as really torrential rain happens. And I'm like, I can picture how long it took for this creek to be made, you know, maybe, you know, about 1,000 years, or let's say, for this creek bed to be, you know, carved out or something. If you extrapolate and look at bigger things, like it just didn't add up. Like I just couldn't reconcile these two things at the same time.
So the world's 6,000 years old, and there's dinosaurs out there when, you know, King Arthur was around.
Yeah, it's just the math didn't work out when I was looking at things that I could see with my own eyes. And it to me, it didn't seem like it was rocket science. It seemed very obvious once I saw how those types of rocks are created. And I'm like, okay, and understood plate tectonics, and it just, the whole thing just kind of fell down. But anyway, I went to this thing, and this guy is just pontificating about the creation of the earth, and you know, they're asking questions. There was like 1,000 kids in the audience, by the way. This is a huge auditorium. And I raised my hand stupidly. I really should just shut the fuck up, but I couldn't help it. I asked the question, and I'm like, so how would you explain, you know, dinosaur bones? Like, how would that? He's like, well, that was put there by Satan.
Oh, wow.
He didn't even say like that happened like 6,000 or 5,000 years ago or something. Like it just like straight up Satan. And I'm like, okay, well, I can stop listening to this guy now. And so as a result, I wrote this paper. It was like,
where did you grow up?
In Southern California.
So this was in Episcopalian church in Southern California.
This was a Bible school in Southern California. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I grew up religious.
Okay.
And to be clear, I really truly believed up to this point.
Sure.
I truly believed.
Why wouldn't you?
There was no reason not to until this stupid geology class that my mom took. I didn't even take the class. Like I just was looking at her homework and I'm like, what the hell? Made me really look at the world differently. So geology, really, these hard sciences, really recommend for little kids. But anyway, so I wrote this paper that was evolution and the theory of God, and I got a D-, just enough to pass, just enough to get on to the next grade, and I never looked back. That said, as I've gotten older, and I've listened to experts in various different religions, I think that throwing the baby out with the bathwater wasn't maybe so wise. I was very quick to dismiss all religion and everything about it all at once. Like one liar, one place turned me away from the whole thing. And which just shows you like how important it is to not to lie to little kids. Like they really take that seriously. But I think that there was a ton to learn from religion, like a ton, an enormous amount. I think the epistemological origins of who we are can be tied heavily to a lot of things that are in religion. And man, it's just like the stories are just baked into who we are in every way. I mean, we know the hero myths, and we know the woman in distress that needs to be, protected from the dragon or from the whatever, right? There's all these stories that are baked into all these religious texts. They might call them different things. They might call it in the Bible, it's called a Leviathan, I mean, it's a dragon. And another text, it'll be called a dragon or whatever, right? But it's all the same thing, right? And a lot of people don't even know that's in the Bible because they haven't actually read it. And then you dig in a little bit deeper. You're like, where'd the Leviathan come from? Well, it came from Mesopotamian myths. Or, okay, where did that come from? And well, that probably came from
Chinese myths with the dragon.
No. It probably came from people going into caves and seeing dinosaur bones and thinking that they didn't know what they were, so that the huge monster,
that was the Leviathan or the dragon or whatever.
Yeah, it eventually became what we think of as dragons or whatever. And we've tried to separate the myth from the reality, but really there was monsters. Yeah. There were these enormous monsters.
We call them dinosaurs, but to them they were monsters.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, humans are old enough, and there's been enough things that have happened that there might have been better examples of more well-preserved things that were dinosaur-like back then, or very, very, very large mammals that we wouldn't even recognize today, that might have lived sort of pre-human writing sort of thing, that were in those caves that they went in. And keep in mind, we're cave living people back then, so we go around. Anyway, so like these myths all sort of align with how society actually evolved. And another, I think there's a lot of reasons I think this, but the myths aren't wrong. They are right. They're just right in a context we can't really grok today. Like people think of the abomination of gay sex, let's say, it's abomination. Well, first of all, the word abomination doesn't mean quite what we think it means today. It means like it's against God's will, but not like you're going to go to hell. More like if you do this, bad things might happen or will happen or whatever. And surely you're more likely to get diseases if you're having anal sex, just due to the aggressiveness and the rupturing and the blood and all that other stuff, right? So you're more likely to die of certain diseases, let's say, especially back then before the use of condoms or whatever, or your shellfish is an abomination. Well, yeah, because he didn't cook it all the way. And so you're going to fucking die. And so, Or like, God rests on the seventh day, so you should rest on the seventh day. Well, why is that? Well, because if you don't, you're going to die of exhaustion. You need some amount of recovery, right? So it's not that the myths are wrong. They're just wrong in the context that we think of things in this, what I really think of as more pseudo science today. Like, we don't really have full science. We don't really know what's true and not true, but for the most part, there are certain things we definitely know is true. But for the vast majority of things, we're still kind of guessing that we're right. And we're building up more and more evidence to prove that we're right, but we're still working on that evidence. Science is not a finished thing. We're nowhere near being finished. There's like all this work being built
every
on
day.
top of it.
I mean, we discover new things every day.
But we also discover we're wrong about things all the time. And that's useful. And so I really don't like throwing religion completely out the door. I think that there is something there. Then I think about, I've had friends who've perished and, like, are they out there fucking haunting me? And I can't.
JD's here for sure.
I can't. I mean, honestly, dude, if I were even like a tiniest amount religious, I would say he is here haunting the crap out of us.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, there's this book in the, I'll see if I can find this video. Unfortunately, I didn't get a video of it happening. I only got a video of it after. But there's a book and we'll go to the range every Friday. There's this book on the wall and it just fell off the wall. And there's no reason for this book to fall off the wall. It's not like it was at a weird angle or something. It was like completely seated against the bookshelf and it just fell off the wall. And we picked it up and it was The Fall of Western Civilization. That was the book. It was Western Civilization, but it was the fall of Western.
The fall of Western Civilization.
And it happened with another book. I can't remember what the other one was. It was just as weird.
The other book was in our podcast, during our podcast.
No, there's a third book.
There was a third book?
There's a third book.
Because we have the video of this episode.
Yeah, I know we do.
We're both talking, and then all of a sudden, bump.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't touch it.
No.
Nobody touched it.
I know. It's very, very strange. So, yeah, I mean, if I were even a little bit, tiniest bit superstitious, I would say, yeah, he's absolutely haunting me. I mean...
Haunting's not the right word. I think
no, it is the right word. I don't think it's a pleasant. I think it's.
Okay.
I think he's finding a way to.
Actually, I need him to help me a little bit now. Come on down.
No, it's a haunting. So anyway, I think it's very strange to think of the idea of not having any afterlife, of there being nothing, truly nothing afterwards. I've heard all the simulation theories. I think they're pretty crap. The reasoning is crap. I don't think they understand enough about computer science to understand why what they're saying is actually less plausible than they think by significant margins. I think the most likely thing is either literally absolutely nothing, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me, like academically. I think that actually might be less plausible than there being some sort of higher power. That doesn't mean I believe, but it means that it's hard for me to reconcile what's going on in my head with modern science and saying that these things are congruent. I don't think so. Now, if you look at quantum physics, they will say that it is a non-deterministic universe, like, things popping in and out of existence. At a macroscopic universe, everything's deterministic. If I knock this cup, the water's going to flow all over the table. Like, this is a known thing. We don't have to guess, right? Now, exactly where the molecules go is still determinate until you get down to the quantum level, and then it's suddenly non-determinate. Well, you could say that those are spirits, right? Those are spirits that are driven from a fifth dimensional universe, kind of peering down into the fourth dimensional universe that we live in, and switching some pool cues around, and suddenly you go left instead of right, or you make a decision to cheat on your wife or not, or whatever, right? There's absolutely nothing about modern science that absolutely cuts off any possibility of there being any kind of higher power or whatever. But also, I don't think that modern science knows enough about what true determinism is. And my gut tells me that we live in a truly deterministic universe. And I am a super determinist, which means that I don't believe in any free will whatsoever. None. That said, I act as if I have free will. And this is actually something I've kind of wanted to talk about with like a criminologist at some point. But so like humans act as if they have free will, but they also act like they don't have free will. So if you're like, there's a little kid and he like comes from a broken home and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, he hits somebody. You're like, well, of course he hit somebody. Like he had a horrible upbringing and, you know, blah, 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 you know.
So it's programming.
Yeah, it's programming.
Yeah.
So we act like it's a deterministic universe. We act as if there was nothing that kid could have done to stop it because everything about his upbringing drove him to this point. And then if that person's like 25 and they knock over a liquor store, you're like, well, like, or, you know, killed somebody or something, God forbid. Well, then like, well, he's an asshole. Well, which is it? Was it a deterministic universe or wasn't it? So we don't act consistent.
Is that the same as like father like son situation? Like if your father was an alcoholic, then 9 times out of 10 you're going to be an alcoholic kind of situation?
I mean,
because
in a macroscopic universe, there's no way to know why one neuron fired or not, right? I mean, we just don't have the tools to know that. So I don't know exactly why anyone did anything. So it's all based on observed statistics, and that's garbage. Right? I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that can fail.
It's faith. Just having faith in what you think is right and what you believe in.
Well, so that's the weird part is I act as if I have free will. I don't act as if I believe the world is super deterministic, which means that I tend to believe that we are sort of meat puppets driven from a fifth dimensional universe. And everything was driven well before the universe was created, and everything since the universe is created is all on rails, which is how, by the way, it's actually very easy to design a system like this in a computer. So if you're in I'm in the simulation camp, this still could be true. And there's all kinds of reasons why, like, and I'm just not a fan of that camp, but, so I act as if there is a non-deterministic free will universe, despite the fact I believe that we're in a super deterministic environment. We just don't understand enough about quantum physics, and I suspect there might be a God.
Okay, well, on that note, Robert, thank you for this interview. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Chris.
And to our audience out there, this is the end of season 8, I believe. You want to
no, this will be the beginning of. It's not even a season anymore. We're not doing that. Remember,
yeah, we're not even doing that.
We're not even doing
right.
that. So we're just starting.
We're starting brand
whatever
new.
Whatever this is, this will just be
still be the RSnake show.
Number 1. So. That'll be the same. It'll be the same. I think we'll probably have to change a little bit about the intros and outros just to make it
new music, maybe.
I don't know. I kind of like the music.
I do like the music,
yeah.
but you know, if you're gonna change, let's do it. Just go all in. You know.
I don't know. We'll have to.
Anyway,
we'll arm wrestle about that one.
Yeah, we will. So everybody, this was the beginning or the end of the RSnake show. However we look at it, probably the beginning, obviously. Thanks for joining us, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for doing it, Chris.
You got it.
Yeah.
See you later.